Dance with me. My ex is watching. The reward is a kiss. Those were the first words Vivian Sterling ever said to Ryan Mercer that sounded more like a confession than an order, and if you had been standing 20 feet away in that chandelier-lit ballroom, you might have thought it was just another rich people game at another Manhattan charity gala. But Ryan knew better the second he looked past her shoulder and saw Grant Holloway smiling without moving, one hand in his pocket, the other resting too casually near a phone pointed in their direction. Traps had a rhythm. They always did. And this one was already in motion before the string quartet reached the chorus. Ryan should not have been there long enough to notice any of it. He was only supposed to help oversee the final logistics, make sure the catering invoices matched the count, check that the freight elevator stayed clear, and leave by 9:30 so he could get home before his 12-year-old daughter, Maddie, started pretending she was not nervous about her school speech in the morning. He had packed her inhaler in the side pocket of her backpack himself, left a sticky note on the fridge beside the leftover mac and cheese, and promised he would be home before she fell asleep. That was the kind of promise Ryan Mercer did not break. Which was why Vivian choosing him out of a room full of men in custom tuxedos made no sense at all. She was the kind of boss people described in lowered voices, sharp, flawless, impossible to rattle, the woman who could walk into a boardroom full of men twice her age and make them sound underprepared in under 2 minutes. Tonight, she looked perfect too. Silver gown. Diamond studs. Chin lifted like nothing in the room could touch her. But her fingers were cold when they brushed his wrist, and her voice dropped just enough for him to hear the crack under the polish. Dance with me, she repeated, eyes locked on his. Please. That one word changed everything. Ryan glanced toward the edge of the ballroom again and caught 3 things in less than a second: Grant watching, a junior PR consultant wearing an event badge from the wrong department, and a camera lens shifting when Vivian stepped closer. Not romance. Not impulse. Setup. He took her hand anyway, because sometimes the only way to stop a fire was to walk straight into the room where the smoke started. Then he leaned in, steady as the first note carried across the floor, and said the one thing no one in Vivian Sterling's world ever dared say to her. You can do better than this. Ryan did not look at Vivian when he said it. He looked at the mirrored column behind her, at the reflection of Grant Holloway pretending to laugh with 2 investors while checking whether they were still on script. Vivian's hand tightened around his shoulder for half a second, not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for Ryan to feel the insult land. In her world, men usually rushed to impress her, rushed to please her, rushed to be seen standing close enough to borrow some of her gravity. Ryan had just done the opposite in the middle of a ballroom worth more than his apartment building. You think I am making a mistake, she said, her smile still polished for the room as they moved into the slow turn of the dance. I know this is a mistake, Ryan said quietly. The question is whether you want to survive it or help them finish it. That made her glance up at him for real. Not as an employee. Not as background. As a problem she had not predicted. The orchestra carried them toward the center of the floor, where the light was brightest and every phone in the room had a cleaner angle. Ryan adjusted their pace by inches, enough to keep Vivian facing away from the nearest camera each time the song rotated them. He did it so smoothly it looked natural. Vivian noticed. Why are you doing that? She asked under her breath. Because the man by the West Bar is not filming for memories, Ryan said. And the woman near the floral arch is wearing an event badge from a department that does not exist. Vivian missed one step. Ryan steadied her without making it obvious. Across the room, Grant's smile changed. Just a little. Like a man who had expected panic and did not like seeing math instead. Vivian kept her chin high, but Ryan could feel the shift in her breathing now. Faster. Shallower. Controlled, but barely. My ex likes theater, she said. Your ex likes leverage, Ryan replied. Theater is just how he sells it. For one moment, something honest flickered across her face. Not weakness. Exhaustion. The kind that came from carrying a version of yourself so long you forgot how heavy it was. Ryan knew that look better than he wanted to. His phone buzzed once in the inside pocket of his jacket. He did not need to check to know it was Maddie's bedtime reminder, the one she always sent with a moon emoji when she was trying to sound brave. 9:21. He had 9 minutes left before breaking a promise. Vivian followed his eyes for the smallest fraction of a second, then looked back at him. "If you are about to tell me to walk away," she said, "do not." Ryan guided her through another turn, then lowered his voice even more. "I am telling you your ex already built the story. If you kiss me, you give him the ending." Vivian did not answer right away, and that told Ryan more than any confession could have. If she had still been thinking like a chief executive, she would have denied it, smiled for the room, and turned this dance into a performance she controlled. Instead, she held his gaze for one dangerous second too long, and Ryan saw it there beneath the polished composure. She was tired. Not gala tired. Not board meeting tired. Soul tired. The kind that made smart people reach for the wrong lifeline because it was the closest thing in the dark. "You do not understand," she said, her voice barely moving behind the smile she wore for the donors circling the dance floor. "Then make me understand," Ryan replied. "Because right now you are letting a man who already knows your worst night write the next one for you." The words landed hard. He felt it in the way her step hesitated, in the quick recovery that came a fraction too late for someone with Vivian Sterling's usual precision. Across the ballroom, Grant shifted his weight, then nodded once toward the woman by the floral arch. Ryan caught it in the reflection again. Signal sent. Timeline moving. "He has people here," Ryan said. "At least 3. Maybe 4. They are not watching to see whether you are happy. They are watching to see whether you are careless." Vivian's expression did not change, but her fingers tightened once more around his hand. "And you know that from one glance?" she asked. "No," Ryan said. "From the second glance. The first tells you where the danger is. The second tells you how patient it is." That made her look at him differently, and Ryan hated that look because he knew exactly what came next whenever people realized he was not what he seemed. Questions. Curiosity. Attention. All the things he had spent years teaching the world not to give him. His phone buzzed again. This time he checked. A text from Maddie lit the screen inside his jacket pocket just enough for him to read it without pulling it out. "Good luck at your fancy work thing, Dad. Do not forget I need poster board in the morning." The knot in his chest pulled tighter. Poster board. 7:45 bus. School speech at 9. A normal life balanced on ordinary details. That was the life he had built with both hands, and he was not about to let a ballroom full of predators stain it. "Listen to me carefully," he said, guiding Vivian through another slow turn as applause rose somewhere near the stage. "In about 5 minutes, someone will want a photo, someone will create a reason for you to stay visible, and someone will leak a story before midnight saying you crossed a line with an employee in public. If you want to beat him, you cannot react like the woman he remembers. You have to become a problem he did not prepare for." For the first time that night, Vivian Sterling stopped trying to lead. "Then tell me what to do," she whispered. Ryan did not waste a second. "When the song ends, do not look at Grant, do not look for cameras, and do not let anyone rush you into a photograph," he said, keeping his tone even as if they were discussing nothing more serious than the tempo. "You are going to thank the donors, excuse yourself for a facilities issue, and walk with me to the service corridor behind the stage. Calm. Not fast. Fast looks guilty." Vivian gave the smallest nod, but then her jaw set in that familiar, dangerous way powerful people did when fear started dressing itself up as control. "And if I do not want to hide in a hallway while my ex writes his own version anyway?" she asked. Ryan met her eyes. "Then you are still thinking about pride." "I am thinking about timing." The song shifted toward its final movement. Around them, glasses lifted, conversations blurred, and the room seemed to lean in without admitting it. That was how public humiliation always worked. It arrived before anyone said the word. Vivian breathed in slowly, then let out a smile that looked perfect from 10 feet away and fragile from 2. "Do you know what he wants?" she asked. "Yes," Ryan said. "He wants you reactive, visible, and alone." "And what do you want?" The question came sharper than she meant it to. For a moment Ryan saw the woman underneath the executive mask, the one who had probably been forced to measure every person in her life by leverage, risk, and cost. He could have lied. He could have said he wanted nothing. But lies were how people like Grant stayed powerful. "I want to get home in time to make sure my daughter has poster board for school," he said. "And I want you to stop handing a cruel man exactly what he came for." Something in Vivian's face changed at that. Not softness. Recognition. As if ordinary love sounded stranger to her than any threat in the room. The music ended. Applause rolled across the ballroom, clean and polite and completely unaware of the cliff hidden under the floorboards. Ryan released Vivian's hand at the exact second he saw the woman by the floral arch step forward with a media smile already loaded. "Right on schedule. Ms. Sterling," she called brightly, "the foundation photographer would love a quick shot of you with your guest." Ryan moved before Vivian could answer. He bent slightly toward the woman, calm, courteous, forgettable. "There is a water leak behind the west curtain," he said. "If it reaches the power strip, this whole stage goes dark in front of 300 donors." The woman froze. Vivian turned to him, startled, because there was no leak. Ryan did not blink. "Now," he said under his breath. And for the first time that night, Vivian Sterling obeyed someone without asking what it would cost her. The service corridor behind the stage smelled like cold metal, fresh linen, and expensive panic. Vivian stopped the second the ballroom doors swung shut behind them, as if silence itself had weight. "There is no water leak," she said. Ryan glanced once toward the security mirror mounted over the loading entrance, checking angles, exits, reflections. "No," he said. "But now everyone who matters is looking at the curtain instead of your face." Vivian folded her arms, the silver fabric catching the low fluorescent light in a way that made her look less like a woman from a magazine cover and more like someone who had been standing too long without a place to sit. "You did not answer my question out there," she said. "How do you know how this works?" Ryan should have given her the simple version. He should have said instinct, luck, common sense. Instead he looked down at his watch. 9:28. 2 minutes to the promise he had made his daughter, and still no clean way out. "Because I used to be the person men like Grant hired when they wanted the truth buried under better timing," he said. Vivian stared at him. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just stunned in a way powerful people rarely allowed themselves to be. "You were in public relations?" she asked. Ryan almost laughed, but there was nothing funny in the memory. "No," he said. "Public relations is what they call it when the lie is polished enough to invoice." Her eyes narrowed. She was too smart not to hear the line beneath the line. "Then what were you?" For a second he saw another hallway in another life, cameras outside hospital doors, voices asking questions no grieving husband could survive answering, a promise made over a tiny sleeping child that he would never let that world touch her again. He pushed the memory back where it belonged. "Someone very good at seeing the trap before people noticed the floor had moved," he said. Vivian looked at him longer this time, recalculating him from the ground up. "You work logistics." "Now I do." "That is not an answer. It is the only one you are getting tonight." Before she could press again, voices drifted from the far end of the corridor. 2 men in tuxedos. One of them laughing too hard. The other saying Grant's name in the careful tone investors used when pretending not to gossip. Ryan stepped closer to the security mirror and saw the reflection of the wrong woman again, the same fake event badge, now speaking to a hotel staffer near the back stairwell. Still moving pieces. Still not done. Vivian followed his gaze. He is not going to stop, is he? Ryan shook his head. Not because you danced with me. Because you did not break when he expected you to. Her expression shifted then, and for the first time since she had crossed that ballroom floor, the steel gave way to something far more dangerous. Honesty. He has medical records, she said quietly. Old ones. Private ones. If the board sees them the wrong way, I do not just lose a vote. I lose the company. Ryan turned toward her fully. There it was. Not jealousy. Not revenge. Not even romance. Survival. And suddenly the dance, the cameras, the baited kiss all made a colder kind of sense. Ryan did not ask what was in the records. He did not need the details to understand the shape of the weapon. In rooms like this, private pain was never treated like pain. It was treated like leverage. How old? He asked. Vivian looked toward the ballroom doors as if she could still hear the orchestra through them. For years, she said. After a loss. After a week I barely remember. I came back too fast, smiled too early, and made sure no one saw what it cost me. Grant kept copies of everything. Ryan nodded once. Not because it was simple, but because it was familiar. Powerful people always believed the secret that nearly broke them would stay buried if they kept performing hard enough. Then the kiss was never about making him jealous, he said. It was about making the room think you were still in control. Vivian gave a dry, humorless exhale. I needed them to see a woman choosing something reckless on purpose, not a woman they could call unstable in private. Ryan looked at her for a long moment. That is not control, he said quietly. That is surrender with better lighting. The words hit harder than he intended. Vivian flinched, just once, then straightened as if pride could patch the bruise. Before either of them could say more, Ryan's phone lit up again. This time he pulled it out. Maddie. He answered at once and kept his voice low. Hey, kiddo. Her voice came through thin and shaky, trying too hard to sound normal. Dad, I am sorry. I know you are at work, but Mrs. Holloway just called the school fundraiser committee, and now Ms. Ortega says my scholarship presentation might be delayed because there is some concern about family publicity. Ryan went still. Not cold. Still. Vivian watched his face change and understood enough not to speak. Did Ms. Ortega say that to you directly? Ryan asked. No, Maddie said. I heard her in the office when I went to bring back my folder. Dad, did I do something wrong? Ryan closed his eyes for half a second. Poster board. Inhaler. School speech. Ordinary things. That was all his daughter had asked from the world, and somehow this night had still found a way to reach her. You did nothing wrong, he said, steady as stone. Listen to me. Put your folder by the front door, drink some water, and get some sleep. I will fix this before breakfast. Maddie trusted him enough not to argue. Okay, she whispered. I love you. I love you more. He ended the call slowly. When he looked up, Vivian had gone pale in a way no camera could ever capture. Holloway, she said. Grant's sister-in-law sits on the school foundation board. Ryan slipped the phone back into his jacket. The moral line in front of him had never looked cleaner or crueler. One staged kiss could probably save Maddie's scholarship by morning. One lie could buy his daughter safety. Vivian saw the thought cross his face and stepped back as if ashamed of herself all over again. Do it then, she said softly. Use me if it saves her. Ryan's expression hardened. No, he said. That is exactly how men like Grant build kingdoms. They convince decent people that one necessary compromise is the same thing as love. For a moment neither of them moved. The corridor hummed with the sound of hidden machinery, the ballroom beyond it still glittering as if none of this were real, as if lives were not being rearranged in the space between one donor speech and the next. Vivian looked at Ryan with something more dangerous than fear now. Shame. I did not know he would reach your daughter, she said. Ryan believed her, which almost made it worse. He had seen enough of this world to know that damage rarely stayed where it was aimed. It rolled downhill. It found the smallest, most decent target in the room and called that collateral. That is the problem with people like Grant, Ryan said. They never stop at the person they hate. They move outward until the whole room learns to stay obedient. Vivian lowered her gaze, and when she spoke again, her voice was stripped of all the steel she used in conference rooms and earnings calls. The records are from after I lost the baby, she said. Not his loss. Mine. He made sure the doctors wrote everything down, then he kept copies after the divorce. When I started winning without him, he began reminding me that a board of directors does not need proof. It only needs doubt. Ryan felt the truth of that settle between them like cold weather. This was not a woman panicking over gossip. This was a woman who had spent years building an empire while one private wound sat in a file somewhere, waiting for the right man to weaponize it. Did anyone else know? He asked. Vivian gave a tiny shake of her head. My attorney. One physician. Grant. That is all. Then tonight is not about the past, Ryan said. It is about forcing you to perform weakness on his schedule. She looked up. And what if he succeeds? Ryan answered without hesitation. Then he still loses if you stop behaving like your dignity can be negotiated. Something in her face trembled at that, then steadied. He could almost see the executive in her reassembling, not from pride this time, but from something cleaner. Choice. At the far end of the corridor, the hotel staffer hurried past with a radio pressed to his ear, heading toward the stage curtains Ryan had used as a decoy. Good. That bought another minute. Maybe two. Ryan checked the mirror again and saw Grant appear near the ballroom entrance, scanning, patient now, curious. A man like that did not fear chaos. He feared silence he did not author. Vivian followed Ryan's line of sight and straightened her shoulders. Tell me the truth, she said. If you were still the man you used to be, what would you do? Ryan did not answer right away. He thought of Maddie's science fair ribbon taped crooked on the refrigerator, of grocery receipts, of school pickup lines, of how carefully he had built a life small enough to protect. Then he thought of a little girl asking if she had done something wrong because adults with money needed a lesson. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm enough to sound gentle. I would stop defending against the story, he said. And I would make your ex explain why he needed a woman's grief to win a business fight. Vivian stared at him. Can you do that? Ryan looked toward the ballroom doors, where the applause was starting again for some polished lie on a microphone. Yes, he said. But the second I do, the life I built to keep my daughter out of this world may not stay hidden anymore. Ryan had spent 7 years making himself ordinary. He had learned how to disappear inside practical shoes, early grocery runs, payroll spreadsheets, and school pickup lines. He had learned that if you kept your voice level and your life small, the world usually moved around you without asking questions. But some nights did not let a man stay hidden. Some nights walked up in a silver gown and asked for a dance while a shark smiled from across the room. Ryan took one slow breath, then reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out an old phone he had not powered on in almost a year. Vivian saw the screen light up and did not ask who was on the other end when he made the call. I need a favor, he said when a man answered. No greeting. No surprise. Just silence sharpened by history. There is a scheduled leak tied to Grant Holloway, a freelance media crew on site, and a conflict trail that leads to a school foundation board. I need the release path, the ghost account, and who funded the consultant by the floral arch. He listened for 5 seconds, then added, No, I am not coming back. I am borrowing one match, not relighting the whole fire. When he ended the call, Vivian was staring at him like the hallway had tilted under her feet. Who are you? She asked. Ryan slid the old phone back into his pocket. A man who learned too late that secrets do not stay contained once other people can profit from them. Before she could answer, his current phone buzzed with an incoming file. 3 names. 2 shell accounts. 1 payment trail leading from a consulting firm Grant secretly controlled to the fake event badge. Now moving through the gala. Ryan looked up at Vivian. We are done hiding in the hallway. He told her exactly what would happen next. She would walk back into the ballroom alone. She would not cling to him, not smile at Grant, not pretend anything. She would ask for the microphone and cut straight through the script everyone expected. No polished remarks. No defensive jokes. Just the truth, carefully chosen and impossible to twist. And while they are listening to me? Vivian asked. Ryan glanced toward the ballroom doors, where another round of applause swelled and faded. While they are listening to you, he said, I am going to make your ex explain why he hired strangers to stage a scandal and why your private grief somehow became a business strategy. Vivian held his gaze for a long second. Then, for the first time that night, she looked less like a woman trying to survive and more like one deciding to fight. If this blows back on you, she said quietly, your daughter will know you were never just the quiet man in logistics. Ryan thought of Maddie's voice asking if she had done something wrong, and something inside him went still in the cleanest way. She was always going to find out who I am, he said. I just wanted her to meet the good part first. Then he opened the ballroom door, and the light poured over both of them like the beginning of a trial. When Vivian Sterling stepped back into the ballroom alone, the room noticed in the quiet way powerful rooms always notice danger. Grant Holloway turned first. Not because he loved her. Not because he missed her. Because predators could feel when prey stopped running the same way they had rehearsed it. Vivian did not smile at him. She did not look for Ryan either. She walked straight to the stage, asked for the microphone, and cut across the master of ceremonies so smoothly half the room thought it had been planned. Good evening, she said, her voice clear enough to still the clink of crystal. I was prepared to give a very polished speech tonight. But polished is expensive, and some of us have already paid enough for appearances. That line changed the air. Grant's face did not move, but the hand at his cufflink did. Vivian stood under the light like a woman finally willing to be seen without armor. She did not mention the records. She did not mention the loss by name. She simply spoke about what it cost to lead while grieving, what it meant to be measured by rumors no man in the same room would ever be asked to survive, and what kind of coward turned private pain into a negotiation tactic. No one breathed loudly after that. And while the room listened, Ryan moved. Quiet men always moved best when louder people thought the story belonged to them. He found the consultant with the fake event badge near the West Arch, intercepted the hotel manager with the payment trail on his phone, and put just enough truth in front of the right board member to make deniability impossible. By the time Grant realized the trap was reversing, he was no longer the man watching from safety. He was the man being watched. The consultant disappeared. 2 donors stepped away from him. 1 board member refused to shake his hand. It was not a public destruction. Men like Grant rarely fell that cleanly. But the spell broke, and sometimes that was how empires started cracking. Vivian left the stage to applause that sounded less like celebration and more like relief. She found Ryan near the service doors, where the gala light gave way to midnight reflections on marble. You did not just save my company, she said softly. You changed the question they were asking about me. Ryan checked the time. 10:12. Too late for bedtime. Too late for poster board at the corner store. Too late for the ordinary ending he had promised himself this night would have. His phone buzzed. A new message from Maddie. Just 6 words. Dad, people are posting about you. Ryan stared at the screen. Not because he was surprised. Because some part of him had still hoped he could step into the fire one last time and come home without smoke on his jacket. Vivian saw his face change. "Go home," she whispered. "Before this reaches her in a way you cannot soften." Ryan gave a small nod, but neither of them moved right away. Too much had shifted. Too much still had not. Grant was not finished. The board would ask harder questions by morning. Maddie had seen enough to begin asking her own. And standing there, in the half-light between scandal and truth, Vivian looked at Ryan not like a boss, not like a woman collecting a debt, but like someone realizing the only man she trusted might now have every reason to walk away. He turned to leave, then stopped when Vivian asked the one question that made the whole night feel unfinished in the deepest way. "If your daughter asks who you really are," she said, "will you tell her about the man who built illusions, or the man who just tore one down?" Ryan looked at the message on his phone, then at the ballroom behind her, where powerful people were already rewriting the story in lowered voices. "That depends," he said quietly. "On whether the truth protects her, or pulls her into the same world I tried to save her from." Then he walked into the night, and Vivian stayed where he left her, still holding the microphone she no longer needed, while somewhere behind them Grant Holloway was already making another call. "So tell me this. If you were Ryan, would you tell Maddie everything, even if the truth changed how she saw her father forever? And if you were Vivian, would you fight for a man who refused to be owned by your power, even when standing beside you might ruin the quiet life he built for his daughter?" Because some stories do not end when the ballroom goes quiet. Sometimes that is exactly where the real trouble begins.